Thank you very much. Thank you and welcome. I'm Father Mitch Pacwa and welcome to Threshold of Hope, where we go through the writings of the Church. And right now we're going through one of the encyclicals of Blessed John Paul, namely Fides et Ratio, which means faith and reason. And you can get a paperback copy from EWTN's religious catalog just by going online to EWTNreligiouscatalog.com, or you can also call their free 800 number, 1-800-854-6316. Another way to get a copy, just go to our website, EWTN.com, and download a free electronic copy of the encyclical. Just type in Fides et Ratio at the Documents Library page, and it'll come up. You can download it into your computer and read from your computer, or print it out, which is not free. You have to pay for your own paper and ink. Now, of course, I want you to be involved. We have a nice group of folks, mostly, not all, but mostly from the great state of Georgia, and folks from Texas and Michigan and other places. And we'd love to have you come and participate in our show by coming to Birmingham, or if you can't, then send us a question by writing to threshold@EWTN.com. Try to answer as many of those as we can. And then, of course, call us during our live broadcast, which is 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesdays, and adjust it to your own time zone. Now, the number you can call is, again, toll-free, 1-800-221-9460. Or if you are outside the United States or right here in Birmingham, you can call 205-271-2980. And we'd be happy to take as many phone calls and questions from our audience and emails. Now, we are presently in chapter 5, which is dealing with some of the ways in which the Magisterium of the Church has intervened in questions about faith and reason. And this is, we're on paragraph 52, discussing that issue. He said, it's not only in recent times that the Magisterium, again, remember the word Magisterium means teaching authority. A magister is the Latin word for teacher. And I believe it's etymologically, it means that you're making the students greater by teaching them. Magisterium is the teaching authority of the church. And it has intervened to make its mind known with regard to various political teachings over the centuries. Okay? We give some examples of why we did that. That there are pronouncements made through the centuries which deal with theories that favor things like the pre-existence of the soul. In other words, there are a number of, in the church, there was one particular theologian. He was the first scripture scholar in the church, but he was also heavily influenced by the writings of Plato. And Plato, perhaps influenced by people from India, believed that the soul transmigrates to other bodies. So when you die, your soul just goes to another body and gets better or worse. And then this other teacher, his name is Origen, O-R-I-G-E-N, taught that the souls were all created at the beginning of creation. And that's what his teaching was. And again, he's somewhat derived from Plato. But he believed that since all the souls are created, they're all waiting for all these billions of years until a body comes along, and then they jump in to each body. Okay? And that was his theory. Now, that was condemned at the Second Council of Constantinople. And there were, in its anathemas against Origen, there are a number of things he taught that had become problems. So in the anathema it said, if anyone asserts the fabulous, and by fabulous they don't mean the way people talk about dresses being fabulous. They mean it's a fable, okay? So the preexistence of the souls, and shall assert the monstrous restoration which follows from it, let him be anathema. Now by the restoration, what they meant was Origen believed that all the souls of the bad people and the demonic spirits and Satan himself at the end of the world would change and convert and get to go to heaven. Okay? That was his doctrine, and that was rejected. Satan, because it misunderstands the nature of the angelic spirits. An angel, is different, is pure spirit. We are not. We are spirit and body. How many of you, you don't have to raise your hands, but I'll raise mine. How many of you have ever tried to go on a diet? And when you go on a diet, you say, I'm going to lose 10 pounds or 5 pounds, whatever it is, until dessert shows up. Because we crave that. We can make a lot of decisions about what we're not going to do, but then the body also says, oh, yeah, but you do like it. Donuts are delicious. Well, the angels don't have that problem. When they make a decision, it's more like setting concrete. They can't change it. So that's why that was rejected. Also, there were a number of condemnations of people who tried to introduce various forms of idolatry, the worship of other deities, other gods, goddesses, or esoteric superstition, such as astrology. These were condemned by the church. For instance, at the Council of Toledo in Spain, paragraph 1, it says, if anyone holds that astrology and the interpretation of stars ought to be believed, let him be anathema. Now, of course, you can believe in the stars. They're out there. That's not a matter of belief. That's a matter of observation. But if you believe that they have some determination over your life, that is a sin. Okay? Because it takes away from trusting in God's providence, and instead puts its trust in and generally in astrology, it's the movement of the planets as mapped out by the stars. If you're ever interested in some of the other issues with that, take a look at the book I wrote called Catholics and the New Age. I have a couple chapters on astrology showing, for instance, probably most everybody knows what sign they are, the sun sign. Well, I'm a Capricorn, I'm a this, I'm a Leo, I'm a Cancer, and all these others. However, what you do not know is that since the 18th century, though it started earlier, all of the signs are 30 degrees off. So whatever sign you think you are actually the sign before, because 30 degrees out of 360 degrees is a full month off. Astrologers know it. They don't like to say it. And again, I always tell people, don't believe me. Go take a look at a map of the constellations. And an astronomer's map, not a goofy astrologer's one, but take a look at an astronomer's map of the constellations, and you will see that the axis of the Earth, which is what's pointing to those constellations, is actually moving into those constellations a month after they say that it is. So it's all off. It's all off. So you can go check that out. And also, were other pronouncements against more systematic philosophies. For instance, Averroism. Averroes was a very, very important Muslim philosopher who used Aristotle. And there's another one called Avicenna, but Averroes was more influential. He helped, get to the West some copies of Aristotle. The monks of the Eastern Church had preserved Aristotle and translated them into Arabic for the Muslim conquerors of the Middle East. But Averroes still read it through something of a Muslim point of view, and one of his basic notions is that you cannot have knowledge of God. You can only obey his will. This becomes very important for some philosophers, such as William of Ockham. He was influenced strongly by Averroes and some others as well. And this is incompatible with the Christian faith. Now, the Magisterium has spoken out more frequently since the middle of the 1800s, so in the 19th century, because in the 1700s and 1800s, a number of Catholics felt it their duty to counter various streams of modern thought with a philosophy of their own. So in the 1700s, you had pure rationalism. That's what they meant by the Enlightenment. You use reason alone. So a number of Catholics came up in the 1800s, especially after the Napoleonic Wars were over. People said, let's get, the philosophy of the 1700s wreaked havoc on Europe. A couple million people died between the 1790s and the 1814. So, given that chaos, death, and destruction, let's come up with a more Catholic answer to these. However, the church itself had to be careful, even though there were a number of Catholics trying to come up with answers against the philosophies of the French Revolution and its predecessors because of the violence. Still, that doesn't mean just because they wanted to do something good doesn't mean that they were always sensible. And the Magisterium, with a longer view, this is one of the great things about being Catholic. 100 years, what's that? It's nothing. No, we, preserve books that are 2,000 years old. And, of course, we preserve the Old Testament, which gives a history that is 3,800 years old. So, 100 years, this is nothing. We have a wider perspective. And they were concerned about some of the errors of these Catholic philosophers. For instance, there was a philosophy called fideism. Well, in the 1700s, they went for rationalism and said reason alone. While fideism, which comes from the Latin word fides, which means faith, just like rationalism comes from ratio, fides, it means faith, and fideism is that. And so the idea was you only have faith. Now, once again, the church said you cannot separate and isolate faith and reason so that faith gets rid of reason. They are distinct from each other, and they both have important, distinct roles. But faith doesn't destroy reason, just as reason needs faith. And fideists tended to think that all you need is faith and not reason at all. The church said, no, you must keep both, thinking and faith. Also, there was what's called radical traditionalism. Now, this is not about traditional liturgy or anything like that. Radical traditionalism meant that you don't have any knowledge through reason. It's all passed on in traditions that come from the human race, and that you don't think about it. It's just the authority of tradition. Now, it's understandable they came up with this idea because after the French Revolution, this did so much damage in Europe. And after there were these Napoleonic Wars that caused even more damage, then people say, we got to go back to traditions that kept us together. And then they came up with an idea, that's all you've got is a tradition. And the church said, no, you still must use your mind to think about these things rationally and understand them rationally. And the church rejected their distrust of reason and its natural capacities. But again, rationalism and ontologism, in which with rationalism, again, only use reason and no faith, while ontologism comes from the Greek word for being, okay? And the idea was you don't have to think about it. You immediately experience the truth. You don't use your mind, it just hits you. And you just know the nature of being. Now that, you don't hear much about that philosophy because it just didn't last very much at all. But they went too far and attributed to natural reason a knowledge which only faith can give. You know, so they believe, for instance, that you don't need to have faith in God, you experience God. A good example of somebody who believed that in modern times was the Swiss psychologist Carl Gustav Jung. He said, I don't believe in God. I know that God exists. Okay? Which is very interesting because he was the son of a minister from the Swiss Reformed Church who taught faith alone. He went to the opposite end of his father on that. And you know, there are some good things in this debate that the church appreciates. It's good to have these debates. Again, as we've said in past shows, it's extremely important to be aware that the Catholic universities had more academic freedom than you find in most universities today. I was just speaking to a couple students. Their teachers will not allow them to think in terms of their faith. And they forbid it and mock it. Whereas in the traditional Catholic university, you could bring up any topic, and if you had reasons to back up what you had, you could present it. But you better be ready because everybody else is ready with their reasons to disagree with you, and they engage in authentic debate and not in mere propaganda. And what we have today is, now that it's gone to a freedom of speech liberal point of view, it is just as closed-minded as they imagine the Catholic universities were, but they weren't that closed-minded. They were definitely more. Now, if you did insist, after you've been proven wrong, and then you insist on holding a dumb idea, then they might get after you. But you could present your ideas and reasons for it. And that the church is in favor of that. And that's why the First Vatican Council, we grew up hearing a lot about the Second Vatican Council, but the First Vatican Council of 1870 was very much concerned with dealing with this relationship between faith and reason. And in that, the document was called Dei Filius, which means Son of God. This was very clearly marked out that the research of many believers, and still is a good reference point to have clear Christian thinking about the importance of faith and reason. Each have their proper gifts, and they each have proper spheres. Now, the Magisterium made pronouncements that were concerned less with individual philosophical theses than with the need for rational philosophical knowledge. The church wants rational thought and promotes it. One of the men who works here at the network, Tommy, was telling me how he'd seen this program. I said, did you see that? I don't know what station it was on, but it was saying how the Catholic Church tried to stop all science, or any scientific development. And I said, what history of science are they reading? I have no idea. Yeah, that Galileo had some trouble, but only because they criticized him for insisting on his theory without having proof for it. They weren't closed to the idea that it was wrong. In fact, there were most of the papal astronomers liked his theory, and they celebrated his theory at the Papal Astronomical Observatory. But they didn't have the evidence to prove the theory yet, and they told him, you cannot teach it as true until you have the evidence. Well, that's good science. And the Pope, by the way, who was himself a very significant mathematician in his day, was the one insisting on the evidence, and Galileo responded by calling the Pope nasty names. Now that's bad. Especially when the Pope is also your ruler. Kings didn't like being mocked in public, and the Pope came down on them. But again, it's good to know that, but there's this need for philosophical knowledge in order to help us with the understanding of the faith. Philosophy is studied in seminaries still, as it always has been, before you study theology. Why? Because you use the tools of philosophy to help you study theology. And I remember there were a number of students in the school I went to who were not Jesuits. They had not had our philosophical training, and they slowed down the classes because they didn't understand philosophy. It is very important for studying theology and understanding faith. Now, the First Vatican Council also wanted to pull together, to synthesize and reaffirm the teachings proposed by the ordinary teachings of the Pope from before that. So there have been lots of things said, including, by the way, papal guarantees of freedom of debate at the universities when city governments in France and Italy and other countries tried to stop debate at the universities. It was the popes who ordered the local governments to say, you may not stop the debate. These are academics. They have freedom to do the debating. And again, it's not well known, that part of history. That's exactly what the popes did, beginning when the universities were founded in the 1200s. So Vatican I wanted to pull some of this together from the papal magisterium. And the First Vatican Council was trying to show how inseparable faith and reason are. That's one of their goals. They go together. Secondly, it also wanted to show how they are distinct. They're not the same. That was the problem of rationalism and fideism. All you need is faith. No, all you need is reason. No, you need both. Faith and reason go together. And that was what Vatican was saying, because Revelation itself, the Bible that is, and tradition, are filled with a love of faith and reason. They go together. And that there is and this is one of the points of the council, there is a natural knowability of the existence of God. In other words, philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, who did not know about the Bible, but still used their minds to reason to the obvious existence of God. Where somebody like Averroes said, no, you can't do that. But Plato and Aristotle did it. And again, I strongly recommend the absolutely marvelous book on this by Edward Facer called The Last Superstition. It is one of the best presentations of the rational arguments for the existence of God I know of. It's marvelous, marvelous. But what the First Vatican Council said in its constitution on the Catholic faith called De Filius, chapter 2, says that, and I quote, Holy Mother Church holds and teaches that God, the beginning and end of all things, can be known with certitude by the natural light of human reason from created things. So the various things that we see, you can go from what you see and experience in life to the existence of God. Indeed, it must be attributed to this divine revelation that those things which in divine things are not impenetrable to human reason by itself, can even in this present condition of the human race be known readily by all with firm certitude and with no admixture of error. You can, in other words, you can use reason to come to know the existence of God and be certain about it. So that's very important part of our faith from a Vatican Council, Vatican I. And against all forms of rationalism, I almost forgot one quote. There's also another assertion that is quoted in the Second Vatican Council, which, again, a lot of people try to say Vatican II is against Vatican I. It's just, I guess they just don't read either one. You know, that's just dumb. But in what Vatican II, in its document Gaudium et Spes 59, quotes Vatican I. And it says in Vatican II, quoting Vatican I, that there are, quote, two orders of knowledge which are distinct, namely faith and reason. And the Church does not forbid that the human arts and disciplines use their own principles and their own method, each in their own domain. So the Church does not expect scientists to hold 1 + 1 = 2. You are allowed to experiment and take one object and one object, see them side by side, and decide that they are two. And you can do the same with the other experiments about the speed of light, gravity, all the rest of things. So we are against all forms of rationalism. We use reason alone, but because there was a need to affirm the distinctions between the mysteries of faith and the findings of philosophy. Now, philosophy cannot know that God became man. That takes revelation. Just like science cannot prove that you walked into this studio by some principle of science. No, you walked in here. That's an historical datum. That you watched the show and is an historical fact. But it's not a theory that all people who live in your block in Georgia must come to the show. That's not a scientific theory. That would be a dumb theory. It's you made choices and so on. That's an historical fact. And you don't use scientific theory to prove that. Neither do you use scientific theory to prove Jesus said, blessed are the poor in spirit. No, you look to the scripture and read it. That's a fact. And, we see that there is a transcendence and precedence of the mysteries of faith over the findings of philosophy. So, for instance, philosophy teaches you much, and they're very good things. But knowing philosophy is not enough to get to heaven. Philosophy can tell you that you do bad behavior, but it cannot prove to you that Jesus Christ died on the cross so that your sins could be forgiven. That's faith. And that's more important when you come to the judgment seat of God. And we also go, the church is clearly against the temptations to fideism. Again, use faith alone. We don't do that either for life. Against fideism, the First Vatican Council stressed the unity of truth and the contribution that rational knowledge can and must make to the knowledge of faith. It is good for people of faith to know science. It makes good introductions of data to you. And that's why, I don't know if you knew this, but there are the creators of the moon are named. The biggest group that has its names on there are Jesuits. Why? Because Jesuits discovered them and they named them. And so it's a good thing to do, so that we really see this unity of knowledge, and that you don't just go by faith. I can believe God created the moon, but I need science to name the craters and come up with a telescope to look at the moon and know that it's not cream cheese or green cheese or anything else. Nothing cheesy about the moon at all. The moon is a big rock that goes in orbit around the Earth. And that's why in Vatican I, in the De Filius book, chapter 4, it says, even if, although faith is above reason, nevertheless, between faith and reason, no true dissension can ever exist, since the same God who reveals mysteries about salvation, for instance, and infuses faith by his grace, has bestowed on the human soul the light of reason. Moreover, God cannot deny himself, nor ever contradict truth with truth. In other words, God is the source of all truths. God is the one who created us differently from the animals. The animals are wonderful. But when I sit and read my breviary, my cats like to come up on my lap. Not because they want to read alone, but because they want to scratch their ear with the zipper of the book cover. That is all they're interested in. But they won't ever learn to read. God created them to do what they do. They're great little hunters. They're nice when they want to be. They're affectionate when they feel like it, and all the things that cats do. But he created you and me and the rest of humanity with a gift of reason, to greater and lesser abilities, to be sure. But there is a gift of reason. And with that gift of reason, we're to know truth. And the truth that we learn from reason is not there to contradict the truth we know by faith, nor is faith to contradict the truth we know by reason. We want to seek the truth, because God won't give truth that then contradicts the other truths. This is a principle that St. Augustine and many others have done. And this is very important for us to imbibe both and try to deal with some of the various issues that come up in our culture. All right, one of the issues that comes from rational thought is that the show takes a break now because the clock comes to a certain point because people invented atomic clocks. So we're going to take a break, and we'll come back in just a couple of minutes with your questions, our studio audiences, and the email. So please stay with us. Thank you very much and welcome. First of all, I want to thank all these folks who did come here from different parts of the country and even different countries like Panama. And I'd like to invite you to come and join us as well. You know, the daffodils are out. Pretty soon the tulip tree was blooming until it snowed again. And it'll probably bloom again. So it's pretty down here. And we'd love to have you join us. If you can make a pilgrimage, please contact our pilgrimage department at 205-271-2966. Or you can go to the website, EWTN.com, and they'll give you information about scheduling of programs, masses, of course, and different tours of the studios, and we'll have you can get up to Hansville to show you how to get up there, places to stay, places to eat. Now the Georgians don't need to be told much about fried green tomatoes, but some of the folks from other places do. So good to have all of you come up here. All right, so let's now we'll start off with a caller. We have Ray. Ray?
Yes, I'm here, Father.
Hi, where are you from?
I'm from El Paso, Texas, West Texas.
Okay, great. I hope you're enjoying some nice weather out there.
Oh, we always have nice weather over here.
Yes. Gets a little warm in the summer.
Very warm.
Yeah. So what's your question, Ray?
Father, first of all, it's an honor to be talking to you. I have several of your books, and I enjoy reading them.
Thank you. Thank you
My
much.
question is, during the Mass, the priest asks for the forgiveness of our sins several times. Once
Yes.
at the beginning, and once when you finish with the gospel, he says, may the words of the gospel wipe away our sins.
Right.
My question is, at that moment, the sins that you carry and the sins that you have committed, are they forgiven by our Lord as if you went to confession? I know it's not a substitute for confession, but
Right.
does that allow you to have a clean heart to go to communion?
Okay. Now, Ray, it depends. If it is a venial sin, then yes. Mass is a place for receiving reconciliation for venial sins. If it is a mortal sin, then no, you must go to confession first. So, yeah, we do have a lot of prayers for forgiveness. There's the Confiteor at the beginning. There's the Lord have mercy. We pray the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. We ask the Lord to, Lord, I'm not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say the word, my soul shall be cleansed. And so, lots and lots of, even in the Gloria, it's the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Have mercy on us, over and over again. But that is for venial sin, which is still good to go to confession for when you get a chance. But for mortal sin, it is necessary to go to confession before receiving communion. Otherwise, if you can't get there, then you just make a spiritual act of communion. But for venial sin, yes, Mass is there for forgiveness of sins. I have another question from our studio audience. Ma'am, where are you from?
I'm from St. Joseph Parish in Athens, Georgia.
Great, good to have you all here.
Thank
you
you
for coming. And your question?
Father, some Christians believe that the creation story in Genesis should be taken literally. And I know the Bible isn't a science book, but what is the church's explanation, and how do we explain it to our children?
Sure. You know, there are a number of things. First, the church does not, doctrinally prohibit that literal interpretation. There's no, council saying you may not believe that. But at the same time, the church also says, we look at the Old Testament and its forms of speech. And exactly as you said, it is not written out as a science book. It is, in fact, one of the keys to reading Genesis 1 is to read it in light of the Babylonian story, the Enuma Elish. You can get an English translation of that on the internet or in a number of books. James Pritchard has one of the best translations of the Enuma Elish. And that's their creation story. And you can see from the way it's structured that the Genesis is very much contradicting that which was a story in which the gods and goddesses were procreating other gods and goddesses who were the forces of nature. And then they got into a war and they killed the grandmother goddess, cut her in half the long way, and the Tigris and Euphrates flowed out of her eyes. And then they killed this monster that was her friend and mixed his blood with the dirt and made people out of that to be the slaves of the gods. And the stars were created to control human destiny because the Babylonians did believe the superstition of astrology. Okay? What does the Bible do? It says, A, there's only one God. B, he didn't fight anybody. He didn't have sexual relations with anybody. When he creates, he does it by his word. And he makes it out of nothing, not out of dead bodies and things. And then you see that he creates the human race in his own image and likeness. And he also makes the sun and moon and the stars to mark the times and seasons, not to control destiny astrologically. And we can say, look, in the light of what they're dealing with, the truths being spoken are tremendous. And even scientifically, something very interesting. I remember when I was in high school, the teacher said, well, see, they're trying to say that this is impossible because on the first day, God creates the light, but he doesn't make the sun, the moon, and the stars till the fourth day. Because, and see, because how could the light be there without the sun, moon, and the stars? Wrong answer. Because, in fact, the first thing that was created in what we now call the Big Bang Theory was light. Light is the first creation. And everything is formed out of light. And we can, take a look and see that science gives a certain amount of insight into this. And again, it's not trying to be scientific, but it's more accurate than, what people had once thought. And to say we take it with the limits of scientific knowledge that they had, we are going to look at the greater knowledge we have of science and try to understand the world. But we can still see that these truths that are in this text are, true. and that God is the one creator, and that there's no evidence in the Big Bang Theory of pouting, killing, sexual relations, or anything like that at all. It's another force, and that there is the creation by his word fits the sense of rational principles that permeate the universe everywhere, such as the structure of the atoms. The periodic table of the elements has this regular structure to it everywhere in the universe. It's not random. It's not something that just feel like it's everywhere. And gravity and the speed of light, these are constants that are everywhere. And that they have a rational quality to them, especially the fact that they all exist together. Now, again, there'll be lots of points about the physics and things I am totally incapable of, dealing with. But I urge people, especially with 13-year-olds or any child, or college student or adult, check out a man who's been a guest on my show any number of times, Anthony Rizzi. He knows the physics. He's a physics professor, and he does theoretical physics and does some very important work in his field and can deal with some of these things. And I recommend taking a look at some of what he's done or what Father Robert Spitzer is doing to help us deal with more of this so that we learn more and more about science and understand it better and see that, we'll take the text for what it's trying to do, which again I believe is to refute the Enuma Elish, which was their problem. They weren't arguing against physicists, but they were arguing against the Babylonians who had conquered them and showing that their view of God is thoroughly wrong. And in fact, the Israelite view of God makes science possible. If you believe that the wind is the god Enlil, then you can't study the wind, you got to placate him. If you believe that the ocean is a god, you can't study oceanography, you just placate him. But when the Bible shows these are just God's creatures, and he made us in his image and likeness with the ability of reason to be able to study these things, that is a totally different thing. And that, is as much as I can understand at this stage of my life, but it's a good thing. Okay. All right, I have an email here. Father Pacwa, please comment on Matthew 6, verse 1, as one of our Protestant friends thinks that the imposition of ashes makes us Catholics look like we're promoting our own holiness to others. Well, let me just show folks what Matthew 6, verse 1 says so you understand it. That's 5, 6, here we go. Pay attention to your righteousness, that you not do it before men in order to show them. And if you do, you will not have your reward from your Father who is in heaven. Okay, that's what he's arguing about. Now, here's the thing. I don't know how he draws the conclusion that we're showing off our holiness. Wearing ashes is showing off. We are dust, and unto dust we shall return. In other words, we are making a very clear statement. We're going to die. Get ready. That's not a statement about our holiness. That's a statement about our mortality. And that's what the priest says, you are dust, and unto dust you shall return. And so it's saying to the rest of the world, and this is a great message for our culture. Our culture thinks you're going to look beautiful And they have all this stuff to keep your chins, you know, smaller, and, you know, you're looking younger, and your skin smooth, and all this stuff. You're still going to die, and your skin is going to corrupt. Saggy chins or thin chins. Tight face where you can't smile like some or other of our politicians, or saggy smiles. Whatever you got, it's going to die. And you are accountable to God. So tell your friend, that's all we're saying. Has nothing to do with our holiness. It's rather a call for us to seek holiness. And that's not an act of righteousness. It's a profession of reality, especially in our culture that doesn't want to hear about it. All right, we have another caller. Hello, Ron.
Good afternoon, Father Mitch.
How you doing? Where are you from?
I'm from New Jersey.
Great. Good to have you. And what is your question?
Thank you. Excuse me. Sunday, I finished reading our catechism.
Sure. Oh, good for you.
Thank you. I'm doing it since December. But as you know, the last section where they do the breakdown of prayers.
Sure.
And in the Our Father, paragraph 2794, where it says, who art in heaven, then it says, heaven is not a place, meaning a space.
Right.
And then it goes on, this, you know, it's like, I really didn't understand it.
Sure.
So I read it again. Then yesterday, Monday, I read it again, trying to figure it out. And then this morning, that was the meeting of Mass. You know, Jesus was teaching the apostle. I said, that must be a sign to quote Father Mitch. So here I am.
What do you have, a telephone next to your lectionary? Anyway, all right, here's the deal. The reason that the Catechism says it's not a place is because place assumes a body, okay? Whereas God, as Jesus our Lord says in John 4, God is spirit. And so God that is not in just one place. God, of course, is everywhere. Nothing exists without his presence. And, you know, of course, they try to use images of a place, but that's to help us with our minds. But, you know, God is beyond place. And when we are dead and in heaven, it won't be a place because we'll be spirit still. And so it won't have that same kind of place. So that's all that's going on there. It's just a matter of, you know, not using images from the world with physical bodies for a world with spirits. Try one last question. Just have a minute and a half. What's your question?
Well, we have in our saints a variety of some that are more intellect and some more inclined to the faith. Where does the church draw the line to see the, like, call doctor of the church, let's say, for example, Saint Teresa of Lisieux,
right,
and versus Thomas Aquinas, or
right. Well, here's, you know, here's one of the great things about Catholicism is that you do have this, and it's true for the other churches too. There's a great variety of people. You don't keep the intellectuals out. You don't limit yourself only to simple people, nor do you keep the simple people out and limit it only to intellectuals. That all of them are called to be saints with the specific gifts they have. That's why St. Augustine said, the faith is like a river, upon whose surface a flea can swim, or in whose body an elephant can drown. That no matter how it's overwhelming for the greatest intellect, it's also simple enough for the person with the least intellect. And this means that we are able to have someone like St. Therese who can teach us her simple way. And that's why she's a doctor. She teaches us a way of the spiritual life. Well, St. Thomas Aquinas is a doctor because he's able to hold in his brain all the objections to the faith and then come up with answers to each objection and lay it out for us to understand. So, and we have all of them in there. And that's one of the cool things. That's why the saints are the ones who are not boring. It's the sinners who are dull as dirt. Because they're all the same. All right. We have run out of time. The Lord bless you and keep you. the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And again, remember that this network is brought to you by you. So please keep us in between your gas bill, electric bill, and cable bill, and we'll pay our bills. Thank you.